What it do, y'all, and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I am so excited to bring you another 3 looks, 1 palette featuring, of course, the Adept Cosmetics Samarian Samarian Sunset palette. This is a palette that is inspired by Star Trek. So in the event that you are interested in hearing more about this particular palette, seeing swatches, comparisons on their previous palettes that I currently own, tutorials, and then of course hearing my current thoughts when it comes to this palette, then just keep watching. Alrighty guys, so like I said, this is the palette right here. It has that beautiful ombre. As always, it has the name imprinted right here. On the back, they have listed Adept Cosmetics, and you still get that beautiful kind of metallic ombre product. Every time that you get a palette from this brand, they come in a black box like this. They always have the information for the brand pretty prominently on the box, and then on the bottom little section it always has the name of the specific palette. Looking at the actual information on this palette, this has 30 grams of product, or 1.06 ounces. It is cruelty-free, vegan, and it has a 12-month shelf life. It has been made in Hong Kong, China, and of course distributed from the Adept Cosmetics warehouse, which is in, I think, Wyoming, based on this, which is new to me. I did not know that. Anyways, they do have information on their ingredients list for specifically the multi-chromes and then the mattes. So based on the packaging, they only classify as having 2 different formulas. Although in my opinion, there's definitely different textures and formulas all throughout this palette, specifically when we're looking at those multi-chrome type shades. And I will kind of talk more about those at the end, and you will see the differences hopefully in the swatches. In those multi-chromes, you do have silk and mica. And another really interesting thing that I don't think I've ever noticed is that in the mattes there is some shea butter. So do keep that information in mind, and if you want a close-up of the actual ingredients list, I always give that to you guys right before we get into the actual swatches of the palette. So I haven't shown you guys the inside. This is one of their more newer layouts. So in this layout, you have 15 shades. There are 10 multi-chromes based on their definition and 5 mattes. This palette does retail for $75, I do believe, which is cheaper than a previous palette with a similar layout. Although I believe that palette had all 15 multi-chromes, and that one was about $129. So this is the second palette that I have from the brand that has 15 shades. And yeah, I think honestly that's all of the descriptions that I need to give you guys. As always, if I forget anything, feel free to comment down below and I will answer any and all questions. Of course, we're going to dive right into the swatches, where I'm going to swatch this palette row by row. And then of course, I'm going to give you guys the comparisons, tutorials, and then of course at the very end is when I'm going to give you guys the review. So if you're interested in any specific part, I always do timestamps on these videos, and of course check those out for your convenience. And with that said, let's just go ahead and dive into the swatches. Okay guys, so we are here for the swatching portion of this video, and I'm so excited. So as I've said before, I have the Samarian Sunset palette. This is the physical packaging of the palette. As you can see, it has that beautiful kind of sheeny ombre from a very light orange to a very strong red, and that's pretty much all you see on the back. Is just the Adept Cosmetics, the ombre, and then the very typical kind of faux leather packaging. As I said prior, the packaging for the actual palette is very similar to how it always is. It has the name of the palette here on the bottom. It has the brand's name, their information for their social media, and then it has all of the ingredients on the back of the actual packaging, as well as the cover insert that is surrounding using the actual palette, I tend to take that out quickly, so I don't always have that information there. And just reiterating again, it has 30 grams or 1.05 ounces. It is cruelty-free, vegan, and there is a 12-month shelf life. So yeah, I hope this is helpful, and feel free to pause it here in the event that you need to look at any of the ingredients. There is silk and mica in the multi-chromes in case that is something that you can't handle. And there also seems to be shea butter as well in the mattes. So let's just dive on in. As always, there is a beautiful mirror that I just like to keep the protective measures over. And it does say the best of both worlds right here on the mirror. I love it. And yeah, this is what the palette looks like. As always, I have natural lighting in front of me, and then I have artificial lighting via my room ceiling light behind me. So as I always like to do, I will do row by row by row for the swatches, and then we will dive into the comparison swatches based on all of the other palettes that I currently have in my collection from this brand specifically. So I'm just going to speed this up just so that it's nice and quick, and then of course put some background music on as well. Okay, so as you can see, this palette swatches out beautifully on my skin tone, specifically the metallics. The mattes can leave a tinge bit of desire with these two more white base mattes, but you guys will be seeing those used slightly in my tutorials. And yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and clean off my arm, and we're gonna get into the comparison swatches. So right here is the new palette, which is the Samarian Sunset. And this is the inspired palette. I do believe I saw that this is now coming back and currently on pre-order. So just know that. If we're looking in person, specifically on the shadows, I don't see any shadow that is very similar at all. They all look very distinctive. Looking through, ooh, you can see me. So looking through at the actual packaging through my monitor, I still don't see anything that's very similar. They all look very distinctive to me. Maybe these two, but the formulas are so different that I honestly, I don't see a purpose in swatching them. So I'm gonna go ahead and move to the next comparison. Next, we have the Heather Austin palette right here, and this is the Samarian Sunset palette. And looking at the shadows in person, straight at the pan, once again, I don't see anything that could be similar. Maybe these two, but they really are different. You can see the shifts are different because in camera, they're pulling different colors. So there's no need to swatch those. And yeah, I'm still not seeing anything that looks very similar that I could even make an argument to swatch. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and skip. Now we're comparing the Samarian palette to the Minka palette, and really at this point it's mainly just the shimmers because there's no mattes even remotely similar between these two palettes. And once again, I think the shifts are different. Looking in the viewfinder, I once again don't really see anything that could be construed as similar. So I'm going to go ahead and skip once again. Now we have the Amunet palette, and I believe this is their dark version of the Amunet palette. And looking at them in pan once again, so far, going through my elimination kind of comparison, I don't see anything similar. Let me look through the viewfinder. Viewfinder, again, I just don't see anything similar, so skipping again. And lastly, but certainly not least, I have my Ninhydrin Deep Palette, and I'm going to look at them from an aerial perspective first. And then let's go ahead and look at it through the monitor. Okay, I think the one thing that I've seen the most similar is maybe these two. If you see them in person, they look completely different. But just to swatch something, I'm going to swatch these two and these two. These two look similar as well. I think that's it. Okay, so we're going to start with the older palette, which once again is the Ninhydrin Deep Palette. So I'm going to swatch ACD 18 and then ACM 32. So these are the two shades from the Ninhydrin Deep Palette. And then I'm comparing them to Mauve and Darmok. So Mauve from the Samarian palette and Darmok from the Samarian palette. Now, what I will say is I think that if for whatever reason this Darmok shade is the shade that's really getting you interested in the Samarian palette, I think you can honestly just skip that. But the differences between the two shimmers is vast. The shimmers, a majority of the shimmers in the Samarian palette is this different texture that's a little bit more flaky. It still has that metallic sheen along with the multi-chrome, but it's not as smooth as a lot of their older multi-chromes were, or even just their metallics. So that is the difference between the formulation there. I'll just give you guys that sneak peek prior to watching me apply them on my face and seeing my review. But if you're really only interested in this particular matte and you have the Ninhydrin, you really just don't need this particular new palette. So yeah. For me, I think that was honestly one of the best showcases of a purpose to potentially pick up a palette if you're very interested in this brand. Granted, I don't have all of their palettes that they've ever released, and I also don't have all of their palettes that are currently in their catalog, but from the ones that I have, this is definitely a unique color scheme, unique colors for the brand. And if this is a brand that is your favorite formulation and you want to have pretty much all of the colors that you could potentially get from this brand, then I would unfortunately say take at least a look at this palette. As I said before, it is only quote unquote $79. So keep that in mind, but I'm going to stop rambling. Let's just go ahead and dive into the tutorials. And then at the very end of this video, I will of course give you guys my current thoughts. And if you want to know my thoughts after testing this palette out even more, definitely go ahead and subscribe, because I always do a palette roundup after testing quite a few palettes. So yeah. I'll see you guys in just a second. Hey guys, so we're gonna do this very quick, simple eye look, and yeah, let's just dive on in. So first things first, I'm gonna take a fluffy brush, which happens to be from Singe Beauty. This is their EO3, and I'm gonna go into this shade over here, which is Darmok, and I'm gonna fluff that into the crease and the outer V area. And the main purpose for this step is just to get it into the crease evenly, both on the outer portion of the crease and the inner portion as well. I am just going to wing this out just a tinge, but not too much. And then I'm just going to start doing that outer V work, but I will switch to a different brush to really make sure that it's nice and impactful in that zone. Like I said, the main thing is just making sure that crease work is nice and laid out, which it's nice and laid out in my opinion. So I really like where this is starting. Then I'm going to take a smaller and tighter, more defined brush. This is the Blend Bunny B5, and I'm going to go right back into that same shade and just more so define this area. I really wanted to challenge this shade to see if I could get some dimension by the actual shade. Fortunately, I wasn't able to do it, but it's okay. And then of course, as you can see, I'm just putting this down on my lower lash line and just doing another precursor blend up top. So that's all the matte shadows. I'm typically more of a matte girly, but with the matte shadows that they had in this palette, this was the only one that I really wanted to use with this look. And then I'm gonna go into the shade Praxis, which is this beautiful multi-chrome. I see it going from a very maroony shade all the way to like a teal green type situation. It's so beautiful, and I'm sure you guys saw it in the swatches at the beginning, so you guys can see all of those beautiful shades. It's a beautiful multi-chrome. So I'm just going to take that on my finger. These shades just really don't pick up the best on a brush. I tend to use Sable hair brushes with my more difficult shades, but I just find that this formula just in general really just doesn't pick up best, and that if you really need to pick it up with a brush to just like chip off a piece, and then that's how I've been able to get it to work. I'm just going to put that on the middle portion of the lid, and then I am going to go ahead and take that Sable brush, which is the W21 from Ecium, and I am going to pick up the shade Rissa, which was a dark horse for me. I didn't expect to love this shade as much as I did. I just thought this shade would work good with the look, the crease work, but this was really the showstopper in this look in my opinion. And I'm just going to kind of create a faux liner with it while I kind of connect both my inner lid, my inner corner, and like I said, create that little faux liner. And the unique thing about this Rissa shade is it's more of a flaky formula, so it's really coming off more impactful than the more metallic multi-chrome. They're both multi-chromes, but because there is quite that difference in texture, you can really see it a lot more impactful, which I'm really liking it. So I'm just going to finish off my look. All I did was put on black eyeliner and black mascara, and then that's it. I'm going to come back, show you guys my first finished look. My next couple looks I'm sure are going to be so much more interesting. It's late. I need to film. It happens sometimes. So give me 1 second and we'll just see the final look of this first tutorial. Alrighty guys, so this is the final look. Alrighty guys, so like I said, this is the first and finished first look. So far I haven't used many shades. I've only used 3, but I am enjoying this palette. Already seeing that there's different textures, different variety than what I remember from Adept. And yeah, I don't want to talk too much. Let's just get into look number 2. Okay guys, so I am here and excited to do look number 2. If you're wondering what's on my face, I put the exact same products on my base today, so it will be the exact same thing. Just check out down below. I will have the same look again tomorrow, so that it's just easy for everybody, so that you know what's on my face this whole video. So now it is time to get this eye look popping, and I've just used my primer, which of course is my About Face primer, and let's just go ahead and jump on in. So I'm going to use pretty much the same brushes I used yesterday, so the Blend Bunny B5, and I'm going to go into the shade Delta Quadrant. So this is the beautiful kind of orangey green, did I just say green? Orangey red tone, and I'm gonna first concentrate this really in the crease area of my lid. I really wanted it to be very impactful in that spot, but I also wanted to test once again the ability of this shadow. And as you can see, I'm just really working this into the crease area, and I will work on the blend in just a second. The main portion of this step is to really just get this crease nice and lathered with that shade. Same with the lower lash line. I of course will be bringing this down there as well. Okay, then I'm gonna take a fluffy Singe brush, the same one I used yesterday. This is the E03, and I am just going to combine the Delta Quadrant and this shade next to it, which is Poisaronic Net. I'm sure I said that wrong. And I'm just going to combine them both. And this is going to be the way in which I blend out that crease section. What I realized in doing my previous eye is that the poisonistic, the lighter of the two shades I'm using right now is just too light. I just don't like how light it is. I'm sure for a lighter complexion it's really going to be useful, but for mine in this step it's just too huge of a jump in my opinion. So I'm just going to go ahead, like I said, and blend these two together to just get a better gradient. And I just think that this eye's blend is just going to look better overall compared to this one. So those are the differences in the eyes in the event that you can see the differences. So I would definitely tell you to do this way if you are of my skin tone or deeper. If you are lighter, you could probably just go between the two and it will work for blending into your skin tone, but it was too much for me. Then I wanted to just add a little bit of depth, even if it was just like a fake amount of depth. So I'm going to go right back in with that Blend Bunny brush, and then I'm going to go into the same dark shade that I used in my outer, my crease and my everything pretty much yesterday, which is Darmok. So I'm just going to take that shade and just try to kind of deepen out the whole look. Now, what I will say is, because this is not the first shade to hit my primer or my eyeshadow primer, it's not going to be as deep as it's not going to appear as deep as it could, but I still felt like it brought me some depth and some dimension. I definitely would have loved to have something even deeper for my skin tone, but you know, beggars can't be choosers in all the instances. So yeah, we're just gonna go ahead and nicely, slowly deepen this up. I don't even want that shade to really go too high. I just want it to be deep in this outer V area and in, you know, preparation for my lid shades. Okay, so not too much blending there. Then we get to the fun part, which is of course the metallics when it comes to Adept. So I once again I'm going to be using two different shades in my lid area. First I'm going to go into USS Defiant, which is this beautiful, beautiful multi-chrome here. This goes from a green to a very true red. It's outstanding. And then the other one I'm using is this one, and that is Farpoint. And it's just another beautiful, I would say this is more of a dual chrome, whereas the one that I'm going to put a majority of my lid is a multi-chrome. You guys will have already seen the swatches at the very beginning. So I'm just going to take this very similar to what I did yesterday and put this on the middle portion of my lid. And since I broke my nail last night, I can actually use my finger a lot easier than I was able to yesterday in my application. And then I will just take the same finger cleaned off and go into Farpoint, which is just going to be a lighter version of this. And once again, it feels like it's a little bit flakier as well. And of course, take time to blend this not only up so it's just not stark, but also blending it onto that previous shade. And if I feel the need, just going back and forth with the colors to make sure there's a nice little gradient there. And then I'm feeling very happy with that blend. Feeling pretty happy with that blend. So to finish up my eye look, I'm just going to put on a black liner. I'm going to put on a winged liner with my NYX Epic line. I'm going to put on my mascara. I've lost my Project Pan mascara somehow, but I do have the ABH mascara open, so I'll just use that. And then I'll come in to zoom in so you guys can see what my look is looking like. And yeah, I think we're gonna go lashless again today. So give me 1 second, let me finish on my look and then I'll zoom in. Okay guys, so this is the finished look. So yeah, like I said, this is the second finished look. And once again, I feel like the thing that I'm learning about this palette, although there's not a lot of variety that I can really do in the mattes, it's really about just putting something in that crease so that you can really let the shimmers shine. So we'll see how tomorrow's look goes. I clearly need to really work with this shade, and I kind of want to work with some of these more cool tone-ish looking shimmers, but we'll also work with this. I just think that this palette is going to be a very different take on the ways that I've been using my Adept palettes, and it'll make me really change my interpretation. I've also seen a difference, I feel like, in the formulations, but once again, we will talk about all of that tomorrow at the end of this video. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this second look. Let's get into the third and final look. Okay guys, so I'm here to bring you the third and final look with this Samarian palette. And I don't know how I feel about this look. I thought it was going to come out warmer than it did. It came out quite cool. Let's apply the same shadows though. So first I'm going to apply the one matte that I really haven't played with, which is Tanagara. So I am going to apply this predominantly on this outer portion of my crease. And I'm going to keep this low, and I will slowly blend it up when the time comes. If you're wondering what brush I'm using, I think this is a Morphe brush. Yeah, this is an M535. It's quite scratchy, so with these Adept shadows, it does cause them to poof up. So just keep that in mind. But I'm running out of, you know, crease fluffy brushes that I enjoy using, so this was just the next one on the pike. Okay, so that's a pretty good base so far. I use the exact same brush, no cleaning off the product, and then I'm gonna go into the shade Jallard. I'm really bad with pronunciations until after the fact, and I look at it and I'm like why? So we're just gonna go ahead and apply a majority of this product in the inner half of my crease. And then what I will do is slowly blend out the outermost portion of the darker green shade with this shade, and then subsequently slowly blend out the very outer portion of this whole area. And it will just allow the whole thing to look a little bit more seamless and blended. I don't want too much of that lighter shade really peeking through on the outer portion. So I'm just gonna add a little bit more of the darker green because I feel like just a little bit too much of that was showcasing, but yeah. There is that. And I just like how it's looking, where there's just a kiss of that lighter tone on the perimeter, but it's helping to blend everything out. So that's all the crease work. And then the lid shade just kind of took over. So I'm using Tal Sahir, and this shade, it was just so intriguing to me. It looks so cool in the pan, and because in my opinion none of these mattes are a cool tone, I just wanted to play with it today. And I originally was not going to use this all over the lid, but the shade was just so unique that I had to, because this is warm and cool tones like crushed together into one color. I'm not sure you'll be able to see the real impact from this distance, but let me go ahead and put on my liner, my mascara, and then I will come in so you guys can really get, hopefully, the full impact of what this shade does on my lids. Okay guys, so this is the finished look. As I started off this series for this particular palette, not using lashes, I chose not to use lashes again today. What I will say is that this palette is very unique in my opinion when it comes to the Adept collection in general. First of all, you have, a nice array of mattes. I will say I'm able to get all of a use out of all of these mattes. I don't particularly like Poistronic Net on my skin tone. I think it just has a tinge bit too much white in it, but the Jallard shade I think looks fine in the inner corner blended like that. I of course still need to have some more time with this palette, but I do like the fact that this kind of brown based green is there, so that if you're somebody who likes a more neutral, kind of typically neutral aesthetic in your crease, you can use this with some more adventurous shimmers. I will say, as always, for me, none of these shades really deepen up enough for my personal liking. I would have preferred a deeper brown, and I honestly would have preferred a more cool tone matte. I find that there is no true cool tone matte to really punch with some of these more cool tone shimmers. I've only really dived into this one, but this one is another really cool tone shimmer. And if you're somebody who you have a more of a cooler undertone, I think it would have behooved the brand to really bring in at least one cooler tone matte and one deeper tone matte. In my opinion, I would have gotten rid of this shade. It's not a preferred shade. I would have kept this and just had a deeper cool tone brown. I think that would have made this whole palette accessible for everybody. Like I said, there's different textures in here though, and I hope you guys saw them when I was going through and swatching all of these shades. Pretty much all of these are a flaky kind of metallic texture. You really saw it in my application today with the Tal Hashir. I'm saying these names all differently every time I try to pronounce them. The Tal Shar, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. But when I applied that on my lid, you really saw the flakiness, which was that more silverness, and then the shimmers, which are more of a warmer shimmer running throughout. So it really is interesting, the variety and textures that she has really brought into this palette. She still has her more traditional metallics that's a little bit more smoother in nature, but she doesn't have her beautifully melted metallic formula in here. I find that Adept has 3 or 4 different metallic formulas or multi-chrome formulas. And in this palette, she really brought one unique one, and then she has her more basic shimmery metallic formula in here as well. Once again, I hope it makes sense to you. If you've seen all the variety in textures that she has brought, I'm sure you know. I will say that, as always, her shimmers are one of those things where I would just strongly recommend picking them up with your finger. It's something about the warmth of your finger really helps to warm up the shades. And for me, a lot of the more flaky textured shadows in here felt even more cream based than some of her previous palettes have felt. And so that's another thing that I really want to make sure you guys know. This just feels like a different formula overall. The mattes still feel the same, but that one type of metallic that she has brought into this palette just feels different. It just feels more creamy. It also feels more flaky when you're applying it to the lid. It just overall is different. Not bad, just different. Overall, like I said, after doing the swatches, I definitely think that this is one of their more unique palettes in their collection. It stands on its own, not only in the actual palette, but also in their collection, which is pretty unheard of for me. When I'm doing these swatching comparisons, I find that I always find at least 2 or 3 shades that are very similar. In this palette, I really had to stretch to find 2 shades to even swatch. So I definitely think and appreciate that this is a unique palette for their brand and their collection in general, specifically based on what I already own. And yeah, I mean, would I recommend this? I think it's nice. I would recommend this over some of the palettes that I don't particularly love. Is this my favorite palette? Unfortunately, it's not. I thought it was going to be more of a love, but there's just some things that I feel like this palette is missing. It definitely has good quality. So if you're just looking for my stamp of approval for quality, means 100% great quality. But as for my collection and my Adept products that I already have, I don't think this really reached the height in that kind of unofficial ranking in my head that I had wished and hoped and planned for it to have done. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have for this video. I truly hope that it was helpful for you all. Definitely, as always, sound off down below if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. All of the products that I've used in all of my makeup looks will be linked and listed down below. And yeah, I think that's all I have for you guys. I also have a playlist for this brand, so I will have that link down below for you guys as well, in the event that you want to see some of the other palettes that I have talked about. Like I said, overall I think this palette is great quality. Is it the best palette in their collection for me and my use of makeup? Maybe not so much, maybe not so much. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye guys.